Donald Trump doesn't believe, he cannot comprehend selfless service. Then the notion of serving something bigger than yourself, he literally cannot comprehend that, right? Everything has to be, what can you get out of it, right? So this entire notion that people would stand up and give their life and serve the country, that's why he calls veterans suckers and losers, right? Because it just doesn't make any sense to him.
All right, we are back with a Democratic congressman representing the district I grew up in, Colorado's 6th, which used to, when I was a kid, be represented by Tom Tancredo, the anti-immigrant far-right firebrand that presaged our current era. So, a lot of changes in Colorado's 6th. Now it's a guy named Jason Crow. How you doing, Congressman?
I'm good, Tim. It has come a long way since the Tancredo days. There's no doubt about it.
A lot of changes in Colorado, all of them good. Y'all are, kind of a shining light out there for Democratic governance. There's some dark spots, but for folks who don't know you, maybe just give us just a really quick penny tour through your backstory.
Sure. Well, I'm in my fourth term. Just started my fourth term as the representative for the sixth district of Colorado. This is the first time I've ever held office. I hadn't run for or been in politics before that. I was practicing law in Colorado. Before that, was in the military. Was an infantry officer and paratrooper and Army Ranger. Did 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. My military career actually started when I got out of high school. I did well in school and didn't have money to pay for college. I was working in construction to help finance my way through school and joined the Wisconsin National Guard, actually. I was born and raised in Wisconsin and joined the Guard to help pay for college. I was driving down the road, saw one of those billboards that said, 100% tuition, for 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. And this was before 9/11, so it was what we used to refer to as the weekend warrior days. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty good deal. All my tuition paid for with 1 weekend a month. And obviously, after 9/11, that changed pretty drastically. So my military career started as a private in the National Guard, and then I ultimately became an officer and went active duty into special operations. So here I am. Came to Colorado after I left the military, so it's been about 20 years now. And
classic Colorado story. People leaving the Midwest for Denver. No shortage of
it's true
out there. It's my parents too. There's so much happening with the Trump administration. Obviously, I want to get to the tariffs. Obviously, I want to get to some of the Democratic, consternation on where the party goes. Obviously, I want to get to the Nuggets firing their coach. But I do want to, since you were in the military, talk to you a little bit about the Trump foreign policy, because I think that's getting overshadowed by our economic dysfunction at the moment. But I was just curious your 2 cents on what we've seen. Obviously, from my vantage point, pretty horrific across the board. But what's jumped out at you on the foreign policy side of things?
Yeah, well, first of all, to say that there is a defined, cohesive Trump foreign policy, I think would be giving them more credit than they deserve. There is no foreign policy or Trump doctrine that I've been able to really discern. I mean, what it is it's a series of grievances, a series of isolationist worldviews, bullying, things that Trump wants to talk about publicly. I mean, that's kind of his economic approach. It's his domestic approach. It's his law enforcement approach, like anything else for that matter. So, spending time talking about Greenland and Panama, and bullying Canada, and maligning some of our closest allies, getting into shouting matches with President Zelensky. It's pretty awful stuff, and as somebody that served with our NATO allies, and when our NATO allies came to our aid and fought with us in Iraq and Afghanistan, and died with us in many occasions, and to see the manner in which Vice President Vance and Donald Trump malign and attack these folks publicly is pretty terrible to see.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was talking with Kinzinger last week about just how much respect the Lithuanians showed, following that tragic death of our, soldiers there, and the military, the parade that they gave them, and the honor, and to see that in contrast with, J.D. Vance, whatever, trying to make Zelensky thank him, or Pete Hegseth trashing our European allies on a signal chain. It is just kind of astonishing, the way that we've treated folks that have fought with you.
Yeah, I my entire adult life, your entire adult life, we've grown up with America as the leader of the free world, right? And that leadership takes so many forms: economic, moral, military, and to see, decades and decades of that leadership squandered in a matter of weeks is completely astonishing, right? And the idea that you can deduce our alliances and our partnership and our leadership down to a series of business transactions, as if our relationships with the UK or the Germans or the Norwegians simply can be deduced down to a ledger sheet of deposits and withdrawals, and you can monetize that, shows just such a fundamental misunderstanding about what leadership really means and what our alliances really mean in the world. And that's not to say that we shouldn't push our partners to invest more, to up defense spending. I mean, there's actually bipartisan consensus on that, right? Like, people say, they need to step up and do more, but obviously maligning them and treating them the way that we have been is not the way to do it.
Right. You said there's no doctrine. I guess the one through line, he is pretty nice to the bad guys as compared to our allies. And I just, in particular, with regards to Ukraine, I know you have some Republican colleagues of yours who are ostensibly pro-Ukraine, who've gotten pretty silent. What do you assess for what's happening right now? Every indication to me seems like they're basically on the Russian side of this negotiation. There's no pressure on Putin. There's no ask for major concessions. We didn't tariff Russia. We did tariff the Ukrainians. I mean, it's an insane situation. What do you assess, particularly with regards to the Ukraine war?
Well, Donald Trump has had this long affinity for Vladimir Putin and for Russia. There's a lot of theories about why this is, but regardless of the theory, it actually, in reality, it's true, right? He isn't willing to be tough on Vladimir Putin, and there's all this talk about peace through strength, right? And my Republican colleagues now, just yesterday we had an Armed Services Committee hearing, and a bunch of folks were invoking Reagan and peace through strength. And Ronald Reagan must have been rolling in his grave, because showing affinity and cozying up to dictators and autocrats is not peace through strength, right? He just isn't willing to call them out, isn't willing to call out the war crimes, isn't willing to call out the kidnapping of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children, isn't willing to say there is a right and a wrong here. There is an aggressor and there is a victim. Russia is the aggressor, and to be firm, right? And if anybody knows Vladimir Putin, which we actually do pretty well, I mean, one of the benefits of Putin is that we actually know him.
Yeah,
he's been on the scene. He's been around. He's been on the scene for 3 decades. We've observed him for a very long time. We understand how he operates. He respects only strength. He never keeps promises and deals. He only does what he's forced to do, and he's not somebody you can trust. And he also believes that his life's work is to rebuild the Russian Empire. And he has actually shown us, you may have seen these videos, he holds up a map of what he thinks the Russian Empire should be and what he wants to rebuild, and it includes a lot of European countries, right? So there's no secret as to what Putin is doing here, and of course Trump is unwilling to call it out.
What about your fellow vets? Is the tune changing at all? I mean, folks you're talking to, and obviously the cuts, VA, having a weekend TV talk show host leading the military, and what's the vibe like from fellow vets? Yeah, well, certainly there's been a dramatic shift. I've seen this, right? In rural districts and red districts, these huge town halls, people that are standing up and saying, wow, this is not what I bargained for, whether it's the increase in prices because of the tariffs, whether it's drastic cuts to healthcare, whether it's huge cuts to the VA system. By the way, at the same time as he's talking about cutting the VA system, he also wants to hold some big military parade in D.C., right? Because he likes to spend money on pomp and circumstance and big parades, but he doesn't want to actually spend money to help disabled veterans. And he went golfing during a dignified transfer of remains ceremony the other week too. So, I think we
the
call that
through
small
line
penis
here
syndrome. It's kind of like a casual term for what happens when you need a big lot of pomp and circumstance for your birthday. But you know,
I think that explains a lot. I'm no psychologist, but I play one on TV sometimes. So, I mean, I think the through line for me is that Donald Trump doesn't believe he cannot comprehend selfless service. Then the notion of serving something bigger than yourself, he literally cannot comprehend that, right? Everything has to be, what can you get out of it? Everything has to be a business transaction, right? So this entire notion that people would stand up and give their life and serve the country, that's why he calls veterans suckers and losers, right? Because it just doesn't make any sense to him.
Let's just talk about the tariffs. And so, obviously, and the markets are still down. There's real life impacts outside of the markets. You've been talking about that. I see you're with the sheet metal workers, I guess, last week. What's your sense for like how bad this is, and if there's any, what is the right thing to do in your shoes to combat it at this point?
Well, it's pretty damn bad. There's no doubt about that. The markets are tanking. Retirement accounts are tanking. We're further marginalizing and isolating ourselves in the world. There's no. Well, let me put it this way. Like, I think it's really important to state that, like most things, Trump, he identifies a legitimate problem, right? But then his solution is all wrong and makes it worse, right? And there are trade imbalances. There are unfair trade practices. Everybody can agree that we need to fix those.
I mean, I guess kind of, though. Like, not really. I mean, the U.S. has benefited pretty well from the trade. I mean, on balance, right? There's certain industries, like the shrimpers, have been hurt by this. Right? Like, there's certain industries you could do targeted things. But, like, on balance, the free trade system has pretty much benefited the U.S.
I don't know if I'd agree with that. If you go to the industrial Midwest, people would vehemently disagree with that, right? That vast swaths of this country have been left behind from the 80s through the early 2000s. The gutting of our industrial base has decimated entire communities and swaths of this country, and in the name of free trade, right? There have definitely been winners and losers. And where I'm from, they have largely been losers. And there's a angst and an anger that I see and I share. So I think that is a problem, right? And tariffs can be a surgical tool, right? They should be used as a scalpel and a surgical tool to address trade imbalances in a pinpointed way. This, of course, is not the way the administration is doing it. They're doing across the board massive tariffs that aren't even tied to the reality of the situation. They say it's reciprocal tariffs, but the numbers they're using on their so-called spreadsheet aren't even in many cases tariffs, right? And economists don't even know where these numbers are coming from. And of course, several of these locations aren't even inhabited territories or countries. So they are just sledgehammering everything, and it's going to make it worse, far worse, right? Because you talk to businesses, right? I talk to businesses all the time, and manufacturers all the time, and what they say is the single biggest issues right now in rebuilding our industrial base, which I would love to do, is we don't have the workforce and we don't have the infrastructure, right? And we don't have predictability in our taxation and economic system, right? So those are the things we need to address, which is going to take a little while. It's going to, 5 to 10 years to address those. You just can't snap your finger and create a workforce and have the infrastructure. So he's decimating the system.
Yeah, the workforce thing is such a good point. That's why, just a lot of this is just a farce. Is that the whole argument over Springfield was right that there was a manufacturing renaissance in Springfield, but there weren't enough workers there to do it, and so that's why there were Haitians that were in town, and that's and then he was out there saying that they were eating the dogs and the cats in the neighborhood, right? So there are a lot. This is a very complicated thing, and having Peter Navarro and these guys just randomly pulling numbers out of their ass and being like, we're going to tariff you 54%. I mean, we're seeing the results. It's going to be, I think, extremely tragic for working people who are going to be hurt by this.
Yeah,
bankers.
Yeah, the admin likes to say, and Trump and all the billionaires around him love to say, oh, this is going to be short-term pain for long-term gain, right? And, where I'm from, I grew up in a working class community around working class folks, right? And these are people who I was raised with often lived paycheck to paycheck. Most of my constituents live paycheck to paycheck, right? They're trying to figure out where their rent is coming from, where their mortgage is coming from for the end of the month, how to put food on the table. And what I realized growing up, what working class people know, is that when people at the top are talking about short-term pain, they're not talking about their pain, right? They're not the ones that are going to feel the pain. They're talking about everybody else's pain, working people's pain. And frankly, this short-term pain is going to end up in people losing homes, losing health care, not being able to feed their children. This is crazy and devastating stuff.
Yeah, I want to talk about working class stuff, but just really quick, one thing on Congress on this before we move on. Don Bacon out today saying that, he's looking at a resolution, getting some Republicans, maybe a privilege resolution to take the power of the purse back for Congress. But like in the same voice or in the same quote, he's saying, we're going to see how it goes. We'll do it maybe in a month or two. Like we might be in a recession in a month or two. It's like, what is your sense for your Republican colleagues? Like they aren't really they were getting pantsed by Trump yesterday at the NRCC thing, and they're not really standing up for themselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Republican Party has prostrated themselves at the altar of Donald Trump. There's no doubt about that. They're constantly getting pantsed, and it's bad. Actually, it's more than bad. It's terrible. It's a tragedy. I was raised in a Republican family. Most of the people I know and love are actually Republicans, and for our system to work, we need to actually have a viable, independent Republican Party. And right now, we don't have that. Right? It's hard to negotiate and compromise and legislate when you don't have a viable party right now to negotiate with.
Okay, just on the working class thing with Dems, this is something you've been pushing. There's a good New York Times piece we'll put in the show notes if people want to read about your work, your recruiting candidates. I've got two thoughts on this. Number one, the one maybe area of disagreement I had with you was you said that the Democrats have an issue with being out of touch with vast swaths of the country, but it's less to do with policy and more to do with visceral matters. Is that really right? Or did the Democrats get misaligned from folks in red parts of the country on certain things, be it crime or immigration, et cetera?
Yeah, it's not totally binary like that. I think it's largely a cultural issue, an understanding issue, because our policies really are working class policies. The exceptions would be, at the state and local level, in a lot of places where Democrats govern, a lot of communities have become unaffordable. Right? How can we be the party of the working class when you look at the cities where we govern that have crime issues, that it's too expensive to build homes and condos, and working folks are actually being priced out of those cities, right? I mean, it's happening over and over again. And in fact, one of the few cities in the country where it hasn't really happened has been Denver. And Denver still is not as affordable as it needs to be. The prices are skyrocketing. But you look at almost every other city in the country, and working class people are leaving the cities, and they're going to more affordable places. So how can you say, if we're governing those areas, that we're the party of the working class, right? So we have to make housing more affordable. We have to be able to build things quicker and cheaper. And we need policies that allow us to keep our communities safe. So those are the policy issues that I think need to change. But I will say at the federal level, I'm a Democrat because I'm not looking for a handout. I'm not looking for somebody to solve all my problems for me or to tell me how to live my life. I'm looking for a level playing field and a fair shake, right? I want to be able to work hard, honest days work, honest days pay, and make sure that the game isn't rigged. And that's why I became a Democrat, why I'm a Democrat, and that's what we're about.
What about the recruiting side? This is going to be your job, partially for the DCCC. I'm one, are you going to go out and recruit people in some of these R plus 12, 13 districts, expand the map? And can you find people with Jason Crow's background who did construction instead of nerds like me who did Model UN and then went to Washington, D.C.? Because there are a lot of Model UN candidates in the Democratic Party and not a lot of people who know how to use a hammer.
Model UN's all right, Tim.
Nothing wrong with it, but you could use a little of both in the conference. That's all I'm saying.
It could. But you went to high school in my district, so I'm not gonna
great.
bang up on
I went to great. I'm great. Nothing wrong. I love Model UN kids. Love. I was not the valedictorian. Love people in the front of the classroom raising their hands.
Yeah.
Could also use some people that excelled in shop class. I think in the Democratic conference.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Can you recruit people like that? Is the question.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Well, first off, what we're not doing is we don't. I want to dispel any myth that we're like parachuting into communities and like selecting the candidate and clearing the field. That's actually not at all what happens, right? What I'm doing is I'm trying to demystify the process, and I'm trying to encourage people to throw their hat in the ring. And there'll be primaries. There'll be everyone needs to run their race, run their primary, and earn it. Right? Every candidate has to earn it, just like I did. I went through a primary too. But what I have found, is that the people that we most need to step up, right? The small business owners, the combat veterans, the nurses, the people running local nonprofits, the school board presidents, people that actually have lived experience and are living their lives, aren't clamoring to run for Congress, right? They're not like, oh, I want to just, quit my business and spend half my time away from my family to go to Washington to jump into this fray, because they have lives. They're doing things, right? So they actually need encouragement. They need people to be like, hey, it's time to step up and serve your country. We need you. This is about service, right? Because they're doing it not to their benefit. They don't need the job. They don't need the money. They're doing it simply out of service. So those are the candidates, and that's how I view my role, is going out, visiting with them, sitting in their living room, calling them, talking to their spouse, and being like, all right, this is what it looks like. This is the sacrifice. This is what the lifestyle looks like. This is how you run a race. And oh, by the way, now is the time for all good men and women to step up and come to the aid of their country. And your nation needs you.
The Venezuelans. We disappeared some people. Like, this government took somebody off the street and put them on a plane and shackled them and sent them to a fucking concentration camp in El Salvador. Why are the Democrats not talking about the people that we sent to this prison without knowing whether or not they're criminals or not?
I actually put out something a couple of days ago. Joe Rogan commented on this, and he's like, this is not okay. Joe is actually an area where sometimes I agree with him. And he said, why are people not getting due process? Why are we kidnapping people off the street? This is not all right. And I retweeted that and made a similar comment. And I've spoken up about it. And I actually had a pretty fierce debate. I guess it was 3 weeks ago. I went on Brian Kilmeade's show on Fox, because I do Fox a lot. And we debated this for a good 10 minutes. And he said, we should just be getting rid of these foreign gang members. Why do you have a problem with deporting these 200? Because it was this flight of 260 Venezuelans at the time. This was last month. He's like, why do you have a problem with that? Why are you trying to protect gang members? And I said, Brian, you're misunderstanding the point, right? Nobody's debating the fact that if there are violent gang members, they should be rounded up, taken off our street, and sent back to where they came from. The point is, in the United States of America, our Constitution weights more heavily the protection of the innocent. Right? Our system is designed to protect the innocent, and we do that through due process, right? And you have to go through that, and that is my beef with the way the administration is doing it. Right? Fine, if you can prove someone's a gang member or has committed a crime or is violent, round them up, put them on a plane, get them out. But you have to prove that, right? Because it's going to happen. It is happening. You're grabbing people that are hanging out, outside of a Quick Trip somewhere or outside of a grocery store because they might look the part or they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they, happen to be someone's father, or they happen to be a union member in the case of the Maryland man. Someone working, she's a sheet metal worker, is a member of the machinist or the sheet metal workers union, actually, and a father and a husband. So this is crazy stuff. It's unacceptable. And frankly, every American should be appalled by this very un-American approach to usurping due process. And I'll continue to speak up about it.
Thank you. I will share that. But you're tweeting a lot. You're posting. I like that. You're posting and you're going on Fox.
Can I put it a different way too, Tim? ask yourself this. I always encourage people to say, okay, so say you wanna round up criminals and send them out. I do too. In the name of efficiency, how many innocent people are okay getting wrapped up in that? Right? Are you okay with 5, with 10, with 20? Right? How many innocent people are you okay with, getting rid of due process and just inadvertently ending up on a plane or a bus to some foreign mega prison? Like, I'm not okay with any innocent people being rounded up. But, there are people out there, literally there are people out there that will say, yeah, I'm okay with 10. I'm okay with 20. That's nuts.
Thank you.
Right? And frankly, that's just not who we are.
I appreciate all that. Do you not think though that some of your colleagues have been not as loud on this? And it is insane. And we're just talking about this. This is insane. Like this is Stalin stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know where, like, maybe I'm just missing it.
Yeah, I think there are some people who are still reluctant to wade into the immigration debate. Generally, they're just sensitive or afraid of wading into it. I'm certainly not, right? Like, I represent a district of immigrants and refugees. 20% of my constituents are born outside of the United States. So I'm in favor of smart, lawful immigration. I'm in favor of a pathway to citizenship for people who are here lawfully and who want to normalize their status. These are business owners. These are the people that I represent. These are families that go to school with my children. I can attest to their positive impact on our country. But I also believe that we haven't had a secure border. We need to have a secure border too, right? That is true. And I also believe that we need to, get rid of violent offenders and enforce the law. So, we can and must do both. And nobody's ever going to tell me in the United States of America that we can't accomplish something like this. Like the things we have done historically, it is small thinking to think that we can't do these things and do them effectively.
We're over time, so we're doing 20-second answers each. Bro talk. Final segment. Number one. Right. Do you have any advice for Secretary Noem on how to hold a firearm?
Yeah, listen. If you don't know how to do it, don't do commando cosplay and just don't do it. Right? Like I see this all the time. People holding firearms, they're not holding them right. They're pointing the muzzle at somebody. It just looks stupid. Stop it with the commando cosplay, trying to pretend you're tough.
Yeah, close to an Alec Baldwin situation with Kristi Noem. For the YouTubers, we'll put up a picture. Okay, number two. What's your guns are looking good? What's your workout routine? We've got an HHS secretary doing shirtless bench presses. Do you have any shirtless bench presses in your future?
I don't know about shirtless. Maybe. Maybe I need to go there. I don't know. I am training right now for the Army physical fitness test. The brand new test that was just rolled out a couple of years ago. I'm taking it in July, so I'm in a big train up period for that. So I'm also of the age now where I have to do variations. So I mix it up. I'll run. I'll do calisthenics. I'll do P90X. I'll do weightlifting. So just as much variation as possible to kind of avoid injury and keep it real.
We'll keep an eye on it. I'll send you some of those old Paul Ryan workout routines. All right, last thing. We did Michael Malone brought Denver its first NBA championship. We did him dirty. They fired him with 3 games left. Do you have any?
I can't believe it. I don't know, man. It's weird going into the playoffs, firing Malone, the winningest coach in Nuggets history. I understand they've been in a losing streak. Lost the last 4, and they wanted to shake it up. I will say this though, that the owners of the Nuggets are engaged. They're involved. They want a winning team, right? Which I appreciate. It's kind of like in the best tradition of Pat Bolin, who was a very involved owner and pushed the Broncos. And I contrast that with the owner of the Rockies, who seemingly don't give
Jared Polis to buy the Rockies. I was telling him that.
I will always take an owner or an ownership group who's engaged and want a winning team and want to win over something like the Rockies, where they just don't care because of revenue sharing. They can make money whether they're winning or not. That's just crazy.
All right. Thanks to Congressman Jason Crow. I had a monologue about the beauty of Nikola Jokic prepared for this podcast, but we ran out of time. Too much crazy shit happening in the world, so we'll do it another time. Come back soon.
All right. Thanks.